When I was a kid, I had a friend who would always have the latest NES games, or Famicom as we knew it. His father owned a furniture store, and for whatever reason, they also used to sell Famicom cartridges. And because his dad always brought them home before selling them, my friend got to play all these games before anyone else it seemed, and this is exactly how I first laid eyes on Kid Dracula. Unfortunately, he was one of those kids who didn't like to share, so yes, invariably his friends, such as myself, would fall into that hapless only got to watch and not play category. South Africa would always get a lot of Japanese cards, including Kid Dracula, and having only received an English localization in 2019, from what I understand. As part of the Castlevania Anniversary Collection, the version I first saw was of course in Japanese too, and no one had a clue what the game was about, or what it was even called. Known as Akumaju Special, Boko Dracula-kun in Japan, but for the sake of simplicity and my sanity, Kid Dracula will have to suffice. My Japanese pronunciations, in case you haven't realized by now, leave a lot to be desired. Will they ever get better? No, probably not. Konami's lesser-known spooky platformer is often considered to be a parody of Castlevania. So much so that many of the levels bear a striking resemblance to some of the levels seen in Castlevania, as we can clearly see here. What I find strange though is that the Kid Dracula game and character itself seem to be basically unheard of, at least outside of Japan, but even so, there's hardly any information or merchandising for Kid Dracula, which is really strange given how marketable and mascot-like he is. I mean, just look at him. Not even a manga series? There was a short comic in each Famicom manual for the game, but yeah, that's it. But just watch this ad though. With that animation and catchy as heck tune, they definitely could have made some kind of anime series, at the very least. You play as the son of Dracula and self-proclaimed Demon King known as Kid Dracula, only he's 10,009 years old. So his diminutive and cutesy demeanor belies the fact that he's not a kid anything. Certainly younger than Dracula, but not a child. After he awakens from a nap, Kid Dracula discovers that a demon named Garamoth has brainwashed all of the plucky vampire's minions in a bid to usurp him. I guess Garamoth just didn't have the balls to go directly after Dracula himself, so immediately you know this guy's gonna be a pussy. Well, if you've watched the Castlevania series, I don't really blame him, I suppose. Dracula is practically the supernatural version of the Terminator. Garamoth also happens to feature in Castlevania Symphony of the Night, but as Galamoth, as Ingrish most likely rears its unsightly head once more to add to the pile of endless Japanese games with localization issues. You'd think they could find at least one English-speaking Westerner to consult for them to curb problems like this, especially long-standing ones like localization issues. So doing what any vampire kid would do, I guess, he borrows his dad's cape and sets out into the world to reclaim what rightfully belongs to his family, all the while growing more powerful along the way in an almost Mega Man-like fashion, with the ultimate goal of curb-stomping Garamoth. The short manga in the manual is all in Japanese, of course, so if you couldn't speak the language, you wouldn't have a clue as to what's happening, but I do see that the Castlevania Anniversary Edition took the time to translate the story from the manual as well. This was easy to deduce, judged by the images and what is written here. Further to that, the bonus book also contains a revised English version of the controls and so forth, as well as design archives containing sketches, map layouts, and storyboards. Now there seems to be absolutely no consistency here as to what century this game is meant to be set in. In the manual he's watching TV, but then he jumps around to what looks like ancient Egypt, a pirate ship with some kind of high-tech interior, a city overrun with aliens, and futuristic tube levels populated with robots. It's like Konami didn't know how to capitalize on the Castlevania elements beyond the initial castle levels and just went completely ham, mashing all kinds of different games together, or maybe given the comedic nature of it all, they were just having a bit of fun with it. Kid Dracula's graphics took full advantage of the zaniness of it all. Large, detailed, and colourful sprites fit perfectly alongside the eclectic mix of stages. Unfortunately, the game is hampered by debilitating slowdown as soon as there's too many sprites on screen, or if the stage contains something complex such as this fast-moving rail level. In terms of gameplay, you'd be forgiven for thinking that this game is easy. I mean, you're playing as a chibi vampire kid battling cutesy zombies, witches, animals and so forth, but nay. Hidden beneath the unassuming wrapper is a moderately challenging game, and in some cases, it even manages to outpace Castlevania. but with only one level in particular. This ridiculous vertical tube level. It's pure nightmare fuel, the slightest mistake and it's all over. I think I must have attempted this level close to 50 times. For the most part, the game consists of typical platforming fare, but man, towards the end it's a steep incline straight to hell. Of course, as is typical for NES platformers, there are end-of-level boss battles. They have nothing on Castlevania's, mind you, but here you get your giant chickens, your giant force-field octopuses... Octopi? Grammatically speaking, octopi is actually incorrect. The plural of octopus is octopuses. I'm not about to do a deep dive in language, but basically it boils down to the word octopus being derived from Greek as opposed to Latin. If you are interested though, I will post a link in the description, you can check it out. More bizarre ones like Lady Liberty, who I might add declares that she can't fight, so proceeds to challenge you to a quiz. And of course Garamoth himself, but nothing could prepare me for the first level boss battle. The Nazi Klansman. Jesus. I mean, I get that it's meant to be a ghost, and fun fact, the swastika in Japan is known as manji, part of Buddhist tradition, but do you think given the events of World War II they'd steer clear of this symbol? But nope, it's in the game manual and even today you'll find it littered all over Japan, especially in older cities like Kyoto and Nara, where there are plenty Buddhist temples bearing manji markings. Bosses in Kid Dracula also make a habit of having multiple forms, so for example you'll fight this little ghost guy, and as soon as you've kicked his ass, his bigger racist Klansman brother gets involved. Kid Dracula's default attack is magic bullets, a sort of fireball thing that reminds me a bit of Mega Man, and if you hold down the attack button it'll even charge up like the Mega Buster, delivering a concentrated fireball burst that deals 3 times the damage of his normal attack. Interestingly enough, the Mega Buster charge made its debut in Mega Man 4, but that game came out a year after Kid Dracula, so I guess Capcom got the idea from Konami? The controls are quite intuitive, so they don't take long to get to grips with, and one thing I really like about this game is that unlike Mega Man, you can also fire up and down, which really comes in handy. I wish more platformers had this functionality. Kid Dracula isn't the fastest moving character around, and the controls in general are a bit clunky, so basically the exact opposite of Mega Man, but if you're a Castlevania aficionado, you'll feel right at home here. Circling back to Mega Man once more, after each boss battle you're presented with a new ability that will aid you in the levels to come. It's a bit like Mega Man where you gain a new ability after defeating Robot Master. The homing shot in particular is very useful, and at certain points you're required to use specific abilities like flight and hang in order to progress. One of the things that I prefer in Kid Dracula is that heart pickups actually give you health. None of that weapon ammunition nonsense, and no having to smash open walls like a rat looking for scraps of food either. Hearts give you health, as they should. Unfortunately, very much like Castlevania, when you take damage, you still fly back like a Hong Kong stuntman taking a hit from Donnie Yen. It's always been the biggest gripe about that series, and it's found its way here too. The one thing that made it needlessly frustrating. Once again, I find myself pissing in fear that some fishman, or in this case bat or witch, is about to smack me with the force of Sagat's tiger uppercut, just for wanting to hop across a goddamn platform. Blending into the weirdness of it all, there are various minigames that play at the end of each level, minigames that would have been basically impossible to play in Japanese for Westerners, without trial and error, especially with that quiz battle. While not technically a minigame, it is text heavy. The minigames are quite varied, ranging from can-can dances to skeletons in a barrel. I'm not always sure how they work, but I basically choose any option that will earn me extra lives, because you can bet your bottom dollar you're gonna need them. Thankfully, the version I'm playing is an English translated Japanese ROM, so I can negotiate the minigames and so forth fairly easily. So is there any particular reason for this game to have faded into obscurity? I don't know, I mean it's a fun game, and there are far worse platformers out there for sure, but to be honest, I'd rather play Castlevania. Of course, this didn't stop me from checking out the Game Boy version of Kid Dracula. Oh yes, the Game Boy version. So, because I seem to have a pathological need to complete the Kid Dracula arc of my life, I also decided to check out the only other game in the series, and this time it was actually called Kid Dracula. Released in 1993 for the Game Boy, Kid Dracula is supposedly a sequel and a remake of the original Famicom game. I guess that makes this a requel? There seems to be even less information about this one, and while the story seems to take a somewhat different approach, in this case Garamoth has returned, and many of Kid Dracula's minions have turned against him, so it's up to you to once again stop him. Conveniently for Garamoth though, the little vampire has forgotten most of his spells, so you get to earn them back in the exact same way as before. Despite the fact that it's well documented that the original Game Boy was severely underpowered even for its time, Konami have done a stellar job here of recreating Kid Dracula on the mobile platform. It all looks and sounds the same, like exactly the same. Damn. I don't want to alarm anyone, but I'm starting to think this isn't a requel at all. Well, to its credit, the music is a bit different from the Famicom version, and supposedly the main musical theme is adapted from Claude Debussy's Gollywog's Cakewalk. And while that initially did seem a bit dubious to me, I took the time to compare the two and I'd have to agree. It sounds similar. What a strange thing to do. One could only wonder what composer Akiko Ito's motivation was. The Famicom's tracks are obviously superior though, but it still doesn't detract from the fact that the Game Boy version soundtrack is pretty damn impressive. The levels are practically the same as the Famicom versions, or in some cases just slightly reworked versions of them, and I like the faux 3D look of some sections like these pillars. It actually reminds me of Battletoads Double Dragon a bit. Ironically, there are sections of the game where it has a little bit more visual flair than its Famicom counterpart, like the aforementioned pillars and the numerous cutscene sections with death. Odd that sections like this weren't really included in the Famicom version. The mini-games return of course, giving you the opportunity to earn lives or coins, and there are some different ones such as Grab Bats, where you are required to catch bats in a net. Ultimately, the Game Boy version is pretty impressive. Sure, the levels are a bit shorter, but the challenge and fun are still there. More so if you've never played the Famicom version. I'm not sure why they chose the requel route. There was plenty of opportunity for Konami to make a completely different Kid Dracula adventure, but I guess they just decided to play it safe, which unfortunately seems to have been the final nail in Kid Dracula's coffin, as this last release heralded the end of what could have been an extremely promising series. Well, I hope you enjoyed this year's Spooky Bitch Halloween special. As always, if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Until next time, keep playing retro.